Omma, a stunning 19-year-old orphan, lived with her uncle, Chief Okonkwo, who had taken her in after her parents' tragic passing when she was just 7. Chief Okonkwo was the wealthiest farmer in Umoma, and he was loved and respected by all villagers. However, he was a very strict man. Despite his strict demeanor, Chief Okonkwo showered Omma with love and care, and treating her like one of his own children. He had two sons. Omma attended the same missionary primary and secondary school as her cousins, where she excelled academically, as Omma celebrated completing her final secondary school exams. A life-altering event shook her world and her destiny forever. A young tourist from the city, in company of other tourists, visited their village, Umoma, in search of adventure. His name was Michael. Omma was on her way to the stream, holding a small water pot and humming softly on that fateful evening when she bumped into Michael, taking a walk alone. He smiled lovingly at her and asked if he could walk with her to the stream. Omma agreed without a second thought. As they walked, Michael told her so many beautiful stories about the big cities and how much he enjoyed being in Umoma. His smile was as warm as the sun that shone over their village, and Omma found herself falling for him. After that day, they began to meet at the stream almost every day, and Michael began to develop feelings for her. He spoke of love and whispered sweet words that made her heart race. Omma fell for his charm, his promises, and the dreams he painted of a life far away from the dust and poverty of her world. 3 days before Michael and other tourists left Umoma, they met again as usual, but this time it was in the small hut where Michael was staying. That evening, they chatted happily. One thing led to other. They both got carried away and made out. It was Omma's first time. Although she felt a little pain, she wished the moment never ended. She felt so safe and secured in his arm. Michael left 3 days later, but promised to return to the village to see her. 3 weeks after that fateful encounter, Omma started experiencing persistent nausea, following a bout of vomiting. Her uncle's wife, Adama, noticed Omma's unusual behavior and grew concerned. After close observation, Adama's suspicion was confirmed. Omma was pregnant. She reported to her husband and summoned by Omma immediately. "You are a disgrace. How can you get pregnant under my roof? After everything I have done for you, how is it that you are going to pay me back with this?" Okonkwo roared, his fury uncontainable. He asked Omma who was responsible for her pregnancy, but Omma had refused to utter a word. She simply kept crying. This further angered her uncle. She begged for mercy, for a second chance, but deep down she knew that there was none. Her uncle was a very strict man, and even his children feared him. "Pack your things and get out of my house, since you do not know who got you pregnant," Okonkwo roared, his face dark with anger. Omma gasped, her eyes widening in horror. "Uncle, please, I have nowhere to go," she cried, "then sleep in the street. I will not house a shameless girl who doesn't know how to close her leg and now doesn't even know who got her pregnant. Go and live with the one who put you in this state." Okonkwo roared. With a fierce glint in his eyes, he stormed into his hut, issuing a stern warning that echoed through the compound. "I better not lay eyes on you when I emerge." Omma turned to Adama, who was almost in tears. She felt sorry for Omma, but they both knew that there was nothing she could do to make her husband change his mind. So Omma packed her clothes and dragged herself out of the compound with her small bag clutched to her chest. The village was silent, save for the chirping of crickets and the distant hooting of an owl. She walked aimlessly, tears blurring her vision, each step filled with uncertainty. She thought of her mother and how she could have held her close, wiped away her tears, and whispered that everything would be all right. But there she was here, no one to be around her. She was all alone. As she wandered through the darkened path, a single question burned in her mind. Where would she go? She had no destination, no plan, only the urgency to keep moving forward. She continued to press on through the darkness and spend the night in the open air. When she was tired of walking, first thing in the morning, she continued on her journey. By noon, she finally reached Anioma, a neighboring village. Anioma was a very small village, and it was easy for the villagers to notice the presence of a stranger. However, since Omma could communicate in their local dialect, they let her stay. In Anioma village, Omma found refuge in an abandoned hut. At the edge of the village, she found some abandoned household items in the hut, which she cleaned up and began to use. It was a very small hut, but at least it had a roof over her head. She survived by begging for food in the marketplace. Sometimes kind strangers gave her food and money. Other times she worked on people's farm, earning meager wage for the hard labor. She also ran errands for wealthy villagers just to get money to feed herself. Begging and doing menial jobs here and there was her routine for many months as her pregnancy progressed. Then, one fateful evening, she had just finished eating and was taking a walk when she felt the first pain of labor. She gasped, holding her stomach, her vision blurry as she fell to the ground. People gathered around, whispering and pointing. When the women realized that she was in labor, they rushed her to the village midwife. Inside the midwife's small maternity hut, Omma's labor progressed well, and after 3 hours, she was delivered of a beautiful baby girl. The old midwife, known as Mama Nkechi, cleaned the newborn with a clean towel and examined her body for any sign of abnormality, but found none. Then she placed the baby in her mother's arm. After wrapping her up in a clean wrapper, Omma stared down at the little face of her daughter. But instead of joy she had heard other mothers speak of after birth, Omma felt only fear, only a deep suffocating weight pressing against her chest. She could barely hold herself together as tears streamed down her face. "How am I supposed to take care of you?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "I have nothing. I cannot even feed myself most days. How will I feed you?" The midwife sighed. "You are stronger than you think. You have survived so much already. You will find a way." 2 days later, the midwife deemed Omma and her child healthy enough for discharge. As Omma prepared to leave, the midwife packed her a bundle of food and gentle, youthly baby clothes, previously belonging to her own granddaughter. "Take this, my dear," she said with a warm smile. "It should help you by until you are strong enough to walk." She then turned to her 12-year-old grandson. "Help Omma carry those things back to her hut." Omma wrapped her baby in the clothes the midwife had given her. She stepped out of the maternity hut, closely followed by the midwife's grandson. They walked past the village square, Omma keeping her head down to avoid the curious stares of those who had once pitied her. When she got to her hut, she collected the gift from the boy and thanked him. Then she sank onto the mat. She had called a bed for months. The baby stayed in her arms, letting out a tiny whimper. Omma rocked her gently, tears slipping down her face as she thought about the cruel reality ahead. "How can I feed you?" she whispered. "How will I protect you?" She had begged for food before and worked on people's farm for a token, but with a child strapped to her back, who would hire her? Who would take pity on her now? She wondered. She thought of going back to beg her uncle, but she knew that would be an effort in futility. He would not keep her in his house with her baby. It was considered a disgrace in Umoma for a girl to give birth and remain in her family house. For hours, she sat there staring at the tiny face of the baby, the hopelessness growing inside her, until a thought crossed her mind. Leaving the baby somewhere she might be found, somewhere safe, she decided to take the baby to the very big river located inside the forest. Only travelers use that route. Omma herself had used the same route on her way to Anioma when her uncle sent her away. "I will leave my baby there and return to my uncle in Umoma. I am too young for this load," she said to herself, hoping that a worthy traveler will find her child, take her in and give her the life she couldn't afford. Very early, 5 days later, when she was very strong enough to embark on the journey, Omma woke up, cleaned her baby up and breastfed her. She also ate the little food she had in the house. When the baby securely tied to her back, she gathered her major belongings, a handful of worn clothes and a small basket. Then, with a deep breath, she set off into the dense forest, her footsteps leading towards the serene waters of the river. Each step she took felt heavier than the last as she walked into the forest. When she reached the river, she hesitated, then knelt on the damp edge, wrapped her baby in a wrapper, then placed her in the basket with some of the baby's clothes, gift from the midwife. She stared at the baby for a while and then burst into tears. "My little baby, my sweet innocent child, please forgive me," she paused, biting her lips as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I have nothing to give you, my love. No warm bed, no food to fill your tiny belly. You deserve a life better than the one I can offer. Maybe someone kind will find you. Maybe they will love you the way I wish I could, without the cruel hands of poverty tearing them apart. Please understand. If I take you with me, I will only end up leading you to suffering, and I cannot bear to watch you wither away in my arms." She pulled a small, carefully wrapped bundle from her dress. She untied it, revealing a single beautiful bead, the only treasure she possessed. "This belongs to my mother, and it was the only gift she gave me before she died. I have nothing else to give you, my love. Nothing but this. May it be a sign that you were not abandoned, but given away with a heart full of love. I name you Chinwendu because only God knows what will become of our life." She carefully placed the bead on the baby's neck. With one last choking sob, she got up and turned, ran as fast as she could, her feet pounding against the forest floor. The cries of her baby faded into the wind, and with each step she took, her soul felt like it was being torn apart. The baby's cry shattered the quiet morning, her tiny body trembling as she kicked and flailed on the basket. Her wails echoed across the water and carried by the wind. Suddenly, the river stirred, revealing a gentle ripple spreading across the surface, distorting the soft reflection of the rising sun. Slowly, a pair of glowing yellow eyes emerged just above the water, unblinking and focused. A massive crocodile slid forward, its dark scaled body moving widely, drawn by the helpless cries of the baby. It cut through the water, swimming towards the river bank where the baby was. The baby's sob grew louder, her tiny fists clenching in distress. The crocodile hesitated for a moment, its powerful tail sweeping behind it, then continued moving closer to the baby. Then, just as the crocodile lunged at the baby, a loud voice rang. "Stop there!" The crocodile stopped in its tracks. From the shadows of the dense forest, a woman emerged, holding a staff. She was middle-aged, her long graying hair cascading over the shoulders. She lifted her hand and began to speak to the animal in a firm but calm voice. The words were ancient and commanding, filled with something beyond human understanding. The crocodile let out a deep, guttering growl, its yellow eyes flickering with something almost like recognition. Then slowly it backed away. With one final glance at the baby, it turned and slipped silently into the river, vanishing beneath the rippling surfaces, as if it had never been there. The woman knelt beside the child, gently lifting her up in the arms. She rocked the baby, whispering softly, her voice soothing like a lullaby. "Our ancestors led me to you, little one," she murmured. "You were never meant to be lost. Now I will become your mother." The baby stopped crying, coiling into the warmth of the stranger's embrace. The woman cast one last glance at the still water before turning towards the forest. Without hesitation, she stepped into the trees, carrying the child away as the wind whispered through the leaves. The river remained silent, undisturbed, but the baby's fate had been rewritten. As for Omma, she continued to walk aimlessly, her feet dragging across the damp earth. Tears streamed down her cheek, and her heart was heavier than her weary body. "What have I done? What kind of a mother am I?" she whispered between sobs. Her body shook as she clutched her small bag around herself. Every step she took away from the river felt like she was tearing herself apart. "I had no choice," she murmured, her voice hoarse. "She deserves better. She deserves to live." Yet her words brought her no comfort. The image of her baby crying alone in the riverbank burned into her mind. Was she still there lying? Had someone found her? The thought of never knowing was almost unbearable. But what choice did she have? If she had kept her child, they both would have perished in hunger and suffering. She wiped her face with trembling hands and pressed forward. The sun had risen higher now, casting golden beams through the thick canopy. She walked and made her way to her home in Umoma, to her uncle's house. She reached the familiar dirt leading to the village. Her legs wobbled as she forced herself forward. Then she entered the village, met by stares of strangers. As she got to her uncle's compound, she hesitated before stepping inside. Her presence unnoticed at first, then a voice called through the air, "Omma!" She turned, and there stood her cousin, Trudy, Okonkwo's first son. His eyes widened in shock. "Trudy!" She choked out, falling to her knees as fresh tears poured from her eyes. Trudy rushed to her, gripping her arms and pulling her up. Omma sobbed harder. He led her into the hut and gave her water to drink. Her uncle and his wife had gone out, returned in the evening. Omma entered their hut and knelt before them. She apologized for getting pregnant and promised it will never happen again. "Where is your baby?" her uncle asked her. Omma burst into tears immediately. "Uncle, I lost the baby," she said. She was stillborn. A sharp silence filled the air. Okonkwo's face twisted with grief. He got up and lifted Omma up from her kneeling position. He pulled her into his embrace, holding her as she wept against his chest. "I am very sorry," Chief Okonkwo apologized. "I think I overreacted. I felt very bad after you left, but I had no idea where to find you," he added. He welcomed Omma back into his home and got her some new set of clothes, as the one she returned with were ragged and unattractive. She gradually began to settle in, but her life never remained the same. She completely lost her peace. She sat at the bamboo mat in the small hut her uncle had given her to stay in, staring at the thatched roof days after she returned to Omma. It was a cool evening. The guilt of what she had done troubled her soul like a relentless beast. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her baby's face, helpless, alone, crying at the river bank. "My child, please forgive me," she whispered as she continued to cry. A soft knock startled her. She wiped her tears and quickly forcing herself to breathe steadily. It was Adamma, her uncle's wife. Omma cleared her throat, composing herself. "Come in," until she managed to say. The door creaked open, and Adamma stepped inside, a concerned look on her face. She sat beside Omma, studying her. "You have been quiet since you returned. You barely eat, and I see your eyes swollen from crying. Tell me, my child, what truly happened?" Omma swallowed hard, fighting back the sob. "I told you, auntie, the baby was stillborn." Adamma sighed, reaching for her hand. "I no grieve when I see it, Omma. I carried 3 babies in my womb before I had my first child. I lost them all before birth, and I know the kind of sorrow that leaves behind. But you, there is something more." Omma forced a small broken smile. "I'll be fine, auntie. I just need time." Adamma studied her for a moment before nodding. "All right, my dear. Just know that you are not alone. You have been given another chance, and Okonkwo had welcomed you back with open arms. Do not let grief swallow your whole." Omma nodded, but deep inside, she knew that it was not grief that was consuming her. It was guilt. After Adamma left, Omma lay down, but sleep refused to come. She felt suffocated by her own thoughts. She stepped outside and quietly walked towards the village stream, the same stream where her love journey with Michael had begun. She found a quiet spot and sat down, staring at her reflection in the water. "I am a monster," she choked out. "I abandoned my own child." Tears dripping from her cheeks. She wished she could go back and undo everything, but it was too late. Her child was gone. She remained at the stream for a while before she returned. Visiting the stream every day, whether or not she was there to fetch water, became Omma's routine. Somehow, that was the only place that gave her comfort. Who then is the strange woman that picked up the baby? The strange woman who picked up the baby was Ujunwa. Ujunwa was from Omma village, the same village as Omma. She had been banished into the evil forest 10 years earlier. Ujunwa was a healer who had lived in Omma village her entire life. She was kind, generous, and known for her healing herbs. She healed all kinds of sicknesses with her miraculous herbs, and she was loved by many. But despite her kindness, fate had been cruel to her. She had been barren in a village where a woman's worth was measured by the number of children she bore. Her childlessness made her a subject of scorn. The whispers followed her whenever she went out, but she endured. One fateful harvest season, the village was plagued by a mysterious illness. It began with the children. One by one, they fell ill with high fever, their bodies covered in strange rashes. Ujunwa did her best to treat the children with her herbs. Some recovered, but many died. Parents wept as their children wasted away, their small frame unable to fight the sickness. Elders were baffled, and fear gripped the Omma people. The king and village chiefs sought guidance from the chief priest, a revered and feared man known as Ezemo. He claimed to speak directly with the gods, and he had made consultation and professed solutions to their problems in the past. When he was consulted, he made some incantation and carried out some ritual for 3 days. Then he asked the king to summon the villagers to the palace before revealing the result of his consultation. The king did as he was told. After the villagers had gathered, the chief priest began to speak. "There is an unclean presence amongst us," he declared, his voice carrying over the ways of the grieving mothers. "The gods are angry. A woman walked among us who has caused this land to become barren. Because of her barrenness, she has been rejected by the gods, and now she brings ruin upon our children." Murmurs spread through the crowd, eyes shifting, searching for a target. Then, as if guided by an unseen force, they all turned towards Ujunwa, the only childless woman in Omma at that time. She froze as the collective gasp filled the air. "No," she protested, stepping backward. "I have done nothing wrong. I am innocent." But her word meant nothing. The chief priest had spoken, and to defy him was to defy the gods themselves. The villagers surged forward, their faces twisted with rage and fear. "She must be cast out," someone shouted. "Banish her," another yelled. "There must be a mix-up somewhere," Ujunwa's husband protested, but no one paid attention. Chief Okonkwo, who had always treated Ujunwa kindly, was one of the few who hesitated. "Are we certain? We have no proof that Ujunwa did that." The chief priest silenced him with a piercing glare. "The gods have spoken. She must be banished into the evil forest before she destroys us all." The king was not happy about the outcome of the chief priest's consultation. Ujunwa was a woman dear to the heart of the royal family, but he had no reason to doubt the chief priest. He was the eyes of the god. He ordered that Ujunwa be banished into the evil forest. Despite the little civilization that was beginning to take place in the village due to the presence of some missionaries who built a primary and secondary school, the Omma people still upheld some of their traditions. One of them was to banish anyone found guilty of treason into the evil forest, knowing that nobody had ever survived the forest. And so Ujunwa was dragged through the village, her cries for mercy ignored. The people she had healed, the women she had comforted, turned their backs on her. They took her to the edge of the forest and commanded her to run inside. She was with nothing but clothes on her. She ran into the forest, away from the echoes of their curses ripping in her ears. Ujunwa wandered through the forest for days until she came across a hut. She wondered how a hut had been built in the evil forest. She moved closer and called out, but no one was inside, and no one answered her. The hut was empty. She entered and found some household items and a basket of clothes. Although she was afraid, she decided to live there, hoping that the owner would show up one day. The owner never showed up, so that became her home. She survived on the knowledge of herbs she had used, and she fed on fruit and some bush animals. Nothing evil happened to her, and she was never attacked by wild animals. She had lived in the forest for 10 years, until that fateful day when she had led a walk far away, until she heard and followed the sound at the river bank, where she picked up Omma's baby. She walked all the way back to her hut and began to raise the baby like her own. Ujunwa saw some herbs, expertly weaving them into natural remedy to stimulate the milk production. Gently massaging her breast, she pours forth a nourishing flow with which she lovingly breastfed the baby. To sustain her own strength, Ujunwa feasted on a lot of juicy fruit and water to ensure to continue to nurture the baby. "You are a gift. You came to me when I had no one," Ujunwa whispered as she fed the baby that morning, knowing that she would not call the baby just child forever. She named her Ifunanya, means love. Ifunanya wiggled in her arms, letting out a tiny laugh. For the first time in years, Ujunwa felt like a sense of purpose has arrived inside of her. Ujunwa spent her days gathering herbs, grinding medicinal roots, and also tending to the child's needs. When the sun began to set, she would carry Ifunanya on her back and walk around the hall singing soft lullabies. As the month passed, Ifunanya grew stronger, her small limbs filling out. She followed Ujunwa everywhere, crawling at first, then stumbling as she learned to walk. Ujunwa taught her how to listen to the whispers of the wind, to recognize the different leaves and their healing properties. "Always remember Ifunanya," Ujunwa would say as she guided her little Ifunanya small hands over different plants. "The earth speaks if you are willing to listen." Ifunanya was growing into a cheerful and ever-smiling, vibrant girl. The forest was her home, and Ujunwa was her mother in every sense of the word. Back in Omma, Omma continued to visit the stream every day to mourn the daughter she left behind, and she kept her secret buried deep within her heart. The gentle ripples of the water seemed to whisper to her, reminding her of what she had done. Sometimes she spoke to the wind, her voice trembling as the water carried her sorrow away. Each day she performed her duties, laughed when necessary, and played the part of a woman healed from grief. But her soul remained restless, and the weight of what she had done never left her. The pain never left, nor did the ache in her chest. Her life in Omma had returned to normal. Her uncle treated her kindly, Adama fusing over her well-being, and yet she felt as though she was merely existing, not truly living. Then one morning, about 2 years after she returned to Omma, everything changed. She was sitting by the stream, lost in thought, as usual. Then a voice called from behind. Her breath caught. The voice was unmistakable, yet impossible. She turned around sharply, her heart racing. Standing few feet was Michael, the man who had changed her life forever. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Michael smiled, his blue eyes warm. Omma gasped, tears instantly welling in her eyes. Michael, is that really you? He stepped closer, reaching her gently. Yes, Omma, I promise I will come back for you. Omma covered his mouth, shaking with emotion. She had long buried any hope of ever seeing him again. The father of her child, the man she had loved so deeply. I came back for you, Omma. I want to keep my promise. I want to marry you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She had dreamed of this moment so many times, but now it was here. It felt unreal. Michael had come back, yet deep in her heart, Omma knew that she was not the same woman he had left behind. She was a mother who abandoned her child. Michael held her hands and looked straight into her eyes. Omma, will you be my wife? She pressed her trembling fingers to her lips. Overwhelmed, Michael, say yes, he whispered. Let me take care of you. She nodded gently, unable to find the words. A sob escaped her lips as he pulled her into her embrace, holding her tightly as if he would never let her go. By the next morning, Michael went to see her uncle, Okonkwo, welcomed him with open arms, touched by his sincerity. When Michael expressed his desire to marry Omma, Okonkwo gave his blessing without hesitation. Adama wept, embracing Omma with joy. Preparation for the traditional marriage was made quickly. Michael returned to the city to finalize some arrangements, but he promised he would return for her. True to his words, he came back 2 months later. With his parents and few friends, they held their traditional marriage surrounded by friends and family. The night before Omma was to leave for the city with her husband, she stood by the stream one night, gazing at the reflection. I am leaving, but my heart will never be free, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Omma left Umoma behind, but not the ghost of her past. She kept the secret of her daughter buried deep within her soul. Although she thought of telling her husband, she was scared of what the outcome would be, so she kicked against it. What do you think about Omma of not telling the husband about the child she had abandoned? Life in Lagos was different. She felt like the beginning for new Omma. The bustling city lights, the well-furnished apartment Michael provided, and the comfort of knowing she was loved should have filled the void in her heart, but nothing seemed to touch the emptiness that settled in her soul. Michael was a good man, attentive, supportive, and kind. He made sure she lacked nothing. They went outing, visited parks, ate at expensive restaurants. From the outside, theirs was a beautiful love story. But for Omma, it was like living inside a glass house. Everything looked perfect. Yet, one emotional crack threatened to shatter it all. The memory of her baby girl haunted her, silently threading itself through every corner of her new life. When Michael noticed it, he brought it up one evening. Omma, why don't you go back to school? You have always wanted to study. Maybe that will help you loosen up. She stared at him with wide eyes. Unsure of how to respond, she obtained a form and began university. Each morning, she left home dressed in modest clothing, blending into the sea of youthful students. She took the bus, attended lectures, read until late into the night. She studied sociology. At school, her brilliance began to shine. Her lecturers praised her essays. She found new confidence in discussion, and some of her classmates even looked up to her like a big sister. Michael was so proud of her. Years passed. She was in her fourth and final year when she discovered she was pregnant again. Michael was overjoyed. 9 months later, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Chibuike, meaning God is my strength. Michael beamed with pride, and even Omma, for a fleeting moment, felt joy ripple through her. Omma sang to him, held him, rocked him to sleep, but the shadow remained. Every time she heard Chibuike, she imagined Chinwendu's face, the baby girl she left crying by the riverbank. Every time Chibuike smiled, it reminded her of the smile she never saw her daughter get. She still refused to tell Michael the truth, even though she knew he deserved to know. At night, she would sneak out of the bed and cry silently in the bedroom floor. She often looked at herself in the mirror, wondering if motherhood would ever feel complete. Her arms were full, but her heart was not. She longed to return to Umoma, to stand by the river again, to speak to the wind and beg for forgiveness. One day, Michael touched her gentle face as they lay on the bed. You are always far away, Omma, even your smile. Where did he go? She forced a laugh. Nowhere, just tired. He believed her, but deep down, he knew something was missing, something she wasn't telling him. Back to the evil forest. 8 years has passed since Ujunwa found Chinwendu, whom she renamed Ifunanya. Ifunanya has grown into a radiant girl, sharp eyes full of questions and wise beyond her years. Her laughter filled the forest hut. Ujunwa had taught her everything she knew: divination, herbal healing, how to whisper to the forest and listen to the wind. Ifunanya absorbed it all like the earth drinks rain. To Ujunwa, she was no longer a child found in grief. She was a daughter born of destiny. Ujunwa had resigned to fate and settled for forest. But one morning, everything changed. She has risen early as always, to gather herbs from the southern slope of the forest. As she bent over a bed of bitter leaf, she suddenly froze. A warm breeze swept past her, and then a voice echoed in her ears. "Go back to Omma. It is time," she gasped, falling backward onto the ground. The leaves trembled around her. Her hands gripped her staff tightly as she looked around, but no one was there. That night, she knelt down by the fire, watching Ifunanya sleep. Could it be the gods calling her home? The same God whose name has used to banish her? Or has her destiny circled back? By morning, her mind was made up. "Ifunanya," she said gently as she woke the girl. "Get up, dress up, my love. We are going on a journey." "To where?" Ifunanya asked, blinking. "Home," Ujunwa whispered. They packed a small bag with herbs and clothes, then set out. Ujunwa didn't know the way, but somehow they kept moving. The journey back through the forest took them 2 days. At dawn on the third day, the villagers saw two figures emerging from the shadows of the evil forest. Gasps rang out, women held their wrappers, children peeked from behind doorways. Few of the villagers recognized Ujunwa. Whispers swirled around Umoma like a rising storm. The return of Ujunwa from the dreaded forest was shocking enough, but the unfamiliar girl beside her ignited even deeper curiosity. People gathered in clusters, exchanging wild guesses, their eyes fixed on the woman once branded a cause. But Ujunwa didn't stop to answer questions. She walked with quiet authority, straight to the palace, her staff tapping against the earth with every determined step. Ifunanya walked quietly beside her. When they reached the palace gate, the head of the guards, who recognized her, was shocked. No one had seen Ujunwa in 8 years, and none had expected her to return. "I need to speak to the king," she said calmly. Moments later, words reached the king that she was around. She was then let in. Ujunwa stepped into the palace and bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty," she began, her voice steady, "I have come to reveal the truth about what happened 8 years ago, and about the sickness that has once ravaged this land." The king sat upright. Ujunwa lifted her eyes. "I was never the cause, Your Majesty. I was only a victim of the lies of the chief priest." The king immediately sent for the chief priest, who by now was old and terribly sick, bedridden in his hut. With the help of his son, he was brought to the palace. When he saw Ujunwa standing before the king, he was shocked. "Chief priest," the king asked sternly, "this woman claims you lied to us, that she was not responsible for the plague that affected our children. Speak now. Did you truly hear from the gods?" The old man coughed, looked down at his trembling hands, but refused to speak. "Speak now," the king thundered. The priest wept suddenly, and his voice broke. "I lied. I lied to you all," he confessed. "I was conducting a forbidden fertility ritual in the sacred grove, one meant to manipulate the birth destinies and bring personal power to myself, not the community. It was never sanctioned by the gods. Ujunwa stumbled upon me. She saw everything. She threatened to expose me to the king." He paused, breathing heavily. "I was terrified, and I knew that if the truth came out, I'll be a disgrace and stripped of my title. So I inflicted the illness on the community, knowing that Ujunwa would be kept busy trying to heal the sick. I seized the opportunity to lie against her. I knew the villagers would believe me over her. I contaminated the village waters with cursed herbs to mimic a spiritual plague." The chief priest continued, his voice growing weaker. "I did that to silence her, to protect myself. I am truly sorry." The king rose from the seat, fury and disbelief contorting his face. "You condemned innocent children. You destroyed this woman's life, and you dare to do the same in the name of the gods." The chief priest simply continued to beg for mercy. But the king's voice thundered, "You will find no mercy here. You are hereby banished into the evil forest to answer to the spirit whose name you defied." But as the guard stepped forward to seize him, the chief priest held his chest. His body shook vigorously, and he collapsed to the floor. His son, trying to lift him up, couldn't feel his pulse anymore. "He's gone," he cried out immediately. Ujunwa turned to the king, her voice quiet. "The truth always finds its way, even though through the darkest shadows." The king apologized to her on behalf of the entire village, and she forgave them all. Ujunwa's husband had remarried and had 2 children while she was away. Ujunwa decided to live alone, even though he was willing to take her back. The king built her a hut, furnished it neatly, and built an extra one where she continued with her herbal medication. The villagers were happy to have her back, and Ujunwa in turn was grateful to have been back home. The remains of the chief priest was buried at the entrance of the evil forest. Ujunwa settled down quickly and enrolled Ifunanya in the village missionary primary school. The villagers began to whisper about the strange girl she returned with. "Who is she?" they asked. "She's She's so beautiful and well-mannered. Ifunanya, now 80 years old, moved through the village with quiet grace. She greeted elders with respect. Her beauty turned head, but it was calm, almost mystical presence that almost left people in awe. Yet no one could exactly say who she was. Ujunwa, when asked, would simply say, "She's my daughter, nothing more." Ujunwa never had a child before. Some would say, "Where did she get her from? She brought her from the forest." Others whispered, "Maybe she's a spirit child." But through it all, Ujunwa remained silent. 3 months after their return, Omma's uncle, Chief Okonkwo, lost his wife, Adama, and Omma traveled to the village for 1 week with her husband and son for the burial rite. They arrived in Umoma by dogs. The compound buzzed with mourners, relatives and neighbors coming to pay respect. But even before the burial rite began, Omma felt the old pull in her chest. That evening, while others settled in, she slipped out quietly and walked the familiar path to the stream where she used to pour her guilt. When she got there, she knelt by the edge and wept silently, her tears rippling into the water. She was still crying when she saw a young girl, graceful and poised, stepped into the stream, her calabash steady in her arms. Around her neck was a coral bead, the same coral bead Omma had worn her baby years at the river where she abandoned her. Omma was shocked to the bone. Her lips parted. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The girl glanced at her briefly and smiled politely, then turned back to her task. Omma's hand began to tremble. She turned and ran back to her uncle's house, barely feeling her steps, barely breathing. When Omma returned to her uncle's compound, she described the girl she had seen at the stream and asked who she was. She got to know her name was Ifunanya, whom Ujunwa had returned with from the evil forest. She says she's her daughter. The woman replied, "But you know Ujunwa never had a child before her banishment. Some say the gods gave her the child in the forest." Omma's heart twisted with every word. She knew the truth. That was her daughter Chinwendu, the girl she had abandoned by the river bank. In the forest, she lost her peace immediately, but still didn't say a word about it to her husband. By the 5th day in Umoma, Omma could no longer contain the storm inside her. Her nights were sleepless, and during the day, she drifted like a shadow around the compound, her eyes searching, her heart trembling. That evening after dinner, she asked to speak with her uncle and her husband. Standing between the most powerful men in her life, Omma confessed everything she had been hiding for years about the riverbank, about the guilt, and about the coral bead. And the girl she had seen at the river. Michael's eyes widened in shock, and Okonkwo covered his mouth, shaking his head slowly. "You mean that girl is Okonkwo?" Couldn't complete the sentence. "I'm sure," Omma whispered. "I tied the bead to her myself." Michael was dumbfounded. He took a step backward, his face darkening. You mean the child was mine? That you gave birth to my daughter and left her in the forest, and you never thought for once that I deserved to know?" Omma's voice cracked. "Michael, I was young. I was scared. I had no home, no support. I didn't think I could raise her alone. You didn't even tell me when I returned to marry you. How could you, Omma?" He snapped, pain thick in his voice. "My daughter grew up in the forest, Omma. She didn't deserve that. None of this should have happened." Okonkwo spoke up, his voice strained with emotion. "It's my fault too. I threw her out when she needed me the most. I failed you as an uncle. I thought I was preserving the family's name. I didn't know." The three of them stood there in thick, suffocating silence, grief and guilt clinging to the air around them. Michael finally spoke, voice low. "We need to see Ujunwa. We need to hear her side and see our daughter properly." Omma nodded slowly. "Yes, it's time." And so they prepared to visit the woman who had become a mother in Omma's place. Very early the next day, the three of them made their way to Ujunwa's hut. Ujunwa looked up as they approached, her expression calm but guided. She stood from where she had been grinding herbs. They exchanged pleasantly, and Ujunwa offered them wooden seats to sit on. Okonkwo broke the silence after they had all sat down. He narrated everything Omma had told them, laying emphasis on the bead around Ifunanya's neck. Ujunwa listened quietly. When Okonkwo was done talking, she spoke with a calm voice. "You are right. I found her by the river bank. I didn't know who she belonged to. All I knew was that the gods led me to her. She was crying, helpless. I took her, raised her, and loved her. Till this day, she doesn't know the story. I deliberately left the bead on her neck because I knew that a day would come like this." Okonkwo nodded slowly. "You saved her, you gave her a life, and we owe you more than we can ever say." A tear escaped Omma's eye. "Can we see her, please?" Ujunwa stood and nodded. "She's fetching water at the stream. She'll return soon." They waited in silence. About 15 minutes later, Ifunanya returned. She paused at the sight of visitors. She dropped her water pot, greeted them respectfully, and turned towards Ujunwa. "Mama, Who are they? She asked gently. Ujunwa stepped forward slowly and held her daughter's hand. My child, these people, they are your biological parents. Ifunanya's forehead squeezed. Biological? The woman who gave birth to you, the man who gave birth to you, they are the ones who brought you into this world. Ujunwa responded, trying to choose her words carefully. Ifunanya stared blankly. But you told me I was your daughter. You are, Ujunwa said, her voice breaking. In every way that matters. But I did not carry you in my womb. I found you 8 years, by the river, wrapped in clothes, crying alone. I was banished from this village. I lived in the forest. That morning I heard your cry. The gods led me there. I picked you up. Omma crawled closer to her knees. Forgive me, Chinwendu. That was the name I gave you. She pleaded. I was scared. I was thrown out. I had no food, no shelter. I thought someone else could give you what I couldn't. But I never stopped loving you. God knows I have not known peace since that day. Not for a single day. Ifunanya turned to her, pain flashing through her innocent young face. If you truly loved me, then why did you leave me alone in the evil forest? Omma clutched her chest, sobbing. Because I was broken. I was a teenager. I had nowhere to go. I thought leaving you there meant someone might find you, someone better than watching you die slowly with me. Michael stepped forward. His voice was, and I didn't know you existed. Your mother never told me she was pregnant. If I had known, I would have searched. I would have fought for you. Ifunanya cried, slow tears sliding down her cheeks, her small body shaking. All these years, I thought I knew who I was, and now I don't know anymore. Okonkwo also apologized, taking all the blame for sending Omma away. Ifunanya nodded slowly. Then, turning to Omma and Michael, she said through sobs, I forgive you, but I won't leave my mama here. She's my mother. She's the only one I know. Omma wept openly. Michael looked away, wiping his tears. Okonkwo placed a hand on Omma's shoulder. Ifunanya, Michael said gently, can we still see you? Be part of your life. She hesitated and whispered, I don't know, maybe, but not now. They all left Ujunwa's hut, broken. The next day, Omma and her family returned to Lagos. When they arrived home, Michael dropped the car keys on the table and walked straight into the bedroom, closing the door behind him. He did not call out to Omma. He did not speak to her for the rest of the night. They began to live like strangers from that day.